Hi there. I wanted to record an introduction walkthrough for Fusion 360 for this class, or really for anybody that wants to come to Fusion 360 and start to learn the basic interface. So let's do that. The assignment is to create your own personal badge, and that basically is getting familiar with the basics of the interface, how to create images, how to create line or work with lines and different line structures, and then to extrude those lines into a three-dimensional form. So to do that, I want to do an initial walkthrough and just get you familiar with the actual parts of Fusion. So let's get Fusion open and we'll do just that. All right, so we have Fusion open. This is your general interface. This is pretty much what it's going to come to anytime you open Fusion, once you sign in and get your account all sorted out. If this is not the exact thing, it's probably just because all I've done is you'll have the grid toggled off and on. That is straight down here, and that just means you might have a blank screen or a different color back screen. That's all. Don't worry about that for right now. Main things I wanted to go over is, first and foremost, how do you open and save files? So to do that, up here in the upper left-hand corner, you'll see different mouse overs, different things, and that is one thing that's really great about the Fusion interface. It is designed to be a somewhat advanced, but still intermediate, very accessible program if you've never worked with any kind of CAD program before. If you mouse over an icon or such, an entire data bar will open up explaining what that tool does, and it'll even give you a little image example. So really convenient. But the first thing is just saving things. So first and foremost, this upper left-hand corner, this little matrix grid thing, show data panel. This is where you'll see your stuff. And if you're in a team as well, like we'll be for our class, for the BSU 3D design, this is where you'll have the shared screen. So you can flip-flop between those. You'll see I already have some of the initial things going. So I will open the badge folder for our class. A couple people have started saving things. I have an example here. But that's where you'll be able to save things. Now you can save things to your own folder. That's totally fine. And then transfer them over to our team folder. That's fine. Unfortunately, at the moment, Fusion does not have an option to be able to just transfer over. So what you'll have to do is save that file to your local computer and then re-upload it to the team. And it's irritating, but it is the workaround. So if you're working on your own folder, or rather on your own storage, flip back over wherever you're working, there you go. But for the sake of this, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put it under my personal works. You see I got a bunch of oddball things going. I'll save my little example there as I do this walkthrough. So I'm gonna close the data panel for now, and we'll come back to that when you need. So the next thing is saving files, that's pretty well standard for anything. You go to either the file icon, which this will give you the drop down for new designs, open and close things, save and upload. I'll get to that when we do the download locally and then upload onto the shared folder, onto the Teams folder. The other thing is just the standard save icon. You're working on a project, hit save. You could choose your folder. You can create your own set of folders within your storage. That's all accessible only to you unless you give other people access. But for now, that's where we're going to work. And like I said, we'll go over the saving in a few. Next thing up is just the general interface. So you have your main toolbar up here, and you'll see that across the top starts with this design icon. Click that. This is where you can have different workspace environments entirely. We will basically just be using the design interface, but there are other things within Fusion: computer generated design, generative design, rendering, animation, simulations, manufacture, drawings. We're not really going to get to any of that stuff this semester. So pretty much just sticking with design. I certainly always encourage you to explore what else is there. Here you have your main workspace. Now these icons will change as you work, in that as you start different components, different parts, things like that, it will automatically change the tools as Fusion's attempt to not have an entire set of sidebar icons clogging up the screen, really just so, especially if you're just coming to this program or CAD in general, you're not overwhelmed with a multitude of different buttons. So any of these are customizable. Any of these icons up here, these Sketch, Extrude, which are the first two tools we'll be using, all these other ones, they are found in the Create dropdown. You can customize your toolbar by mousing over any one tool. Let's say I want to add lofts to my toolbar. You see when I mouse over, and of course the tool explanation window pops up. You'll see these three little ellipses dots. Click that, and it will allow you to pin that to your toolbar or to your shortcuts. Shortcuts is anytime you're not sure where a tool is, press the S button or key, and you'll bring up a little design shortcuts toolbar. This is where that will also appear. So you can expand this as you prefer. And it also has a built-in search bar there too. So that's how you can work with that stuff. We're not really going to work with a lot of the other stuff just yet, but here you'll see at the top it says solid, but then next to it, it says surface, mesh, and so forth. This is other design environments entirely. So this is actually really cool, like sheet metal. You can actually design things that are intended to be built, actually manufactured in sheet metal. So it will actually create a expanded form, like it's unfolded. And that way you would cut that form out of actual material and then fold it to shape. So a pre-built pattern, that sort of thing. You have your variety of different tools. We're not going to get to this stuff, but basically it does have a built-in direct link to 3D printing through this make here. We're not going to use that. We're actually going to use a different program entirely because we are using different printers. Similar with surfaces, this is creating like surface materials. Mesh is much more with polygon construction. We're going to try and get to some of this stuff this semester, but we're going to see how it all goes. But basically, this is your tool layout. Modifiers do just that. They're different modifiers. Assembly, we'll get to the assembly again. This is where you actually have different components entirely. And that's how you can create joints and actually make them move and such and animated within. The other tools, again, we'll get to in a few. The other aspects you want to see is up here in the upper right-hand corner. This is your view cube. This shows you how you are really being able to see your environment. Now, if you've ever worked with any other 3D modeling programs, any CAD programs, you're probably used to seeing the 4 different views rather than just this big perspective view. You can change that. Down at the center of the screen at the bottom, you'll see these different options. You have orbit, look at, pan, zoom, in and out, fit. If you're using a 3-button mouse, which is what I highly recommend, rather if like you're on a laptop and you're just using the touchpad, you can then use these different ways to both, if you press and hold the center wheel, that is how you pan. To orbit, you hold shift and then press the center wheel, and you can orbit around your object and such through this virtual plane. Now, if you get confused and such, and in general just have to look around, your view cube is how you can more intentionally view items. Once you mouse over the view cube, you'll see this little home button appear. You press that, and the screen will reorient to 3/4 perspective. Like I said, if you are used to other viewing methods, like the more standard drafting or CAD design layout, if you go to the center buttons down the bottom, viewports, multiple views, or press Shift I, not I, exclamation point or 1, that will shift between your standard 4 different views. So you'll have top, front, right, and perspective. You can, of course, change those around. It's up to you. I sometimes like to work this way. This is what I learned on originally. But more recently, I prefer to work with the single view and what I can orbit around and such. So totally up to you. Let's see. All right. So next up is camera views. 3-button mouse. Oh yeah, if on a wheel, you can zoom in and out by scrolling the wheel. Makes sense. Your view options, again, pan, orbit, and zoom are controlled by that. Or again, you can use the orbit button, and I'm just using the cursor key to escape out of that. You hit the escape button, and same with any of the others, pan. It's the exact same thing if you're using a 3-wheel mouse. or 3-button mouse, sorry. So those are pretty much your standards. And again, you can shift or you can shift between the two options for views, be it 4-view or perspective view, with the hotkey as it shows down here, shift exclamation point or shift 1, same deal. If you like to work with the grid or don't, you can open the little grid section and play with different options. Uncheck the box. Now you just have this blank white screen, which is nice for viewing your object, but it's really convenient for building things to actually have the grid present. Other thing is display settings, and these are just simply changing the display options. The visual style, it'll make a lot more sense when we start to build, once we start building something, so I'll go over that then. Mesh display, same. Environment, this just changes the background. Say you're working late at night and you don't want the bright screen blowing at you. Yeah, you can change for like the dark sky, or maybe something more of like the photo booth, tranquil blue, whatever have you. Totally up to you. That really doesn't matter. I'm going to go back with photo booth. It's just the best one that I prefer right now. Visibilities and things like that, those are all things to be changed later on as you prefer, but most likely you're not going to get to those. All right. So you have this general stuffs down. Now on the other side here, you'll see on the left-hand corner, you'll see this thing that says unsaved, document settings, name views, and origin. This is your hierarchy tree. This will expand as you build more complex things, as you put more things into the project. Same thing goes for the very bottom of your screen. There's this play bar down here. You got the play button, fast forward and all the way over, and then there's a slider. There's nothing there yet. This is your history slider. You can move back and forth within a project depending on how many different parts you've put into it, like different changes, things like that, different modifiers. You can cycle back and forth through those to either put new things in, change it around, edit things out, standard stuff. So that's just your history slider. But that's pretty much how that goes. All right. Okay, so that's the general layout. Where do we go from here? Well, the project is we're going to build something based off of lines and extrude those lines. Now you can kind of freeform this, or you can start from something. The standard starting point for most of the things we're going to work with throughout the semester are sketches. So under your solids workspace, which is what we're probably going to be defaulting for most of it, the first icon creates sketch. A sketch is literally just a 2-dimensional set of lines that can be worked from beyond there. Now, when I say 2-dimensional, that doesn't necessarily mean it's flat. One of the things I want you to reference is, once I click this, now you'll see these 3 different planes. These are showing your different, exactly that, planes. They correspond to your view cube. If you're looking straight down, you can see the same things on the view cube as you see on this, what's called the origin set. And this is currently what's hidden on your hierarchy tree. It shows up normally when you start, or when you start a new sketch or something, it'll hide later. You can toggle that with a little eyeball icon. But you see these lines, and I'll zoom in. That whole thing keeps changing, or it stays the same size. X axis is the red one, corresponds here. X is your left and right. Y is the green one that is currently going off in the opposite diagonal. That is your forward and back. The Z axis is the blue line. That is up and down. So when you're working like on the standard like sketch set, usually it's going to default to the XY plane. So looking straight down, that's basically looking at a table in front of you. If you're working straight in front of you, that would be the XZ plane. And you can select those by mousing over these different flat planar spots. And I mouse over the XY plane, which is between the green and red. There we go. So I'll be working there. So now that I've started a sketch, now you can see that the toolbar at the top has completely changed. Now you are seeing all of your sketch line property tools. And I'm going to go ahead and just click the top of the view cube to top. So it just zooms over to there. Now it did alter to where double check your lines because it's showing X going straight up and down and Y going left and right. If I mouse over the view cube, you'll now see these two little arrows going just out to the upper right of the cube. Click that and you can just rotate over. So now it's where it's supposed to be. Doesn't really matter for what we're doing at the moment, but for general reference, especially as you get more complex, good to know how to alter those things. All right, so from here, you could just doodle. Your basic ones are going to start from lines. And again, as you start, you have hotkeys. You can just press the L key or click the line tool. And you can just choose somewhere. If you want to start right smack in the middle, that's fine. If you want to start anywhere else, click and that will start. You don't have to hold the button down. But as I mouse over, you'll see these different lines coming out and you can see different measurements. Now you can input these numerically, or you can just click and drag and then change them later. You can get them close to and change them later. You'll see as I move my cursor around, one is highlighted. It is currently in metric. The default for everything is metric. So either get used to metric or you can change that later. You can just draw outwards and keep going off in different directions, different angles, or you can start entering these numerically. Now say like, you know what, this line, I actually really want it to be 15 millimeters. If I want it to be at a certain angle, I can use the tab key. That goes over to the degrees. I want that to be at 112 degrees. Blah, there you go. So now that one actually locks in place. Once we connect these, this whole thing, this whole doodle here will show as a solid sketch. So I'm going to connect a line, draw straight from the first point to the last. Now, and I'm going to press escape just to get out of the line tool. Now this whole thing, this perimeter now has a light blue hue to it. This is showing you that it is a closed sketch. A closed sketch can be extruded. An open sketch cannot because it has no actual dimensions. At the moment, it is singular line in space. Once it's closed, you can work with it. And you can play around with different constraints, things like that. If you wanted to change the length, well, this one already has a length assigned, so I can double click that and say, you know what, I really wanted that to be 18. Click there, and you see the rest of the sketch flexes to, or rather changes to match that dimension. You'll see some of these icons here. If I zoom in, like on this line, this double line here, and this double line here. That is a constraint referencing your parallels, or referencing to be parallel. These lines are parallel to one another. This little floating T here is a perpendicular constraint. What these will allow you to do is you can draw a little more loosely, and then you can apply constraints that will then lock lines into one another. What that means is, say I wanted this line to be parallel to that line. Maybe I just drew this and you know what? I actually want that to be like more rectangular. So what I can do is deselect anything, click parallel. I can select that line and then that line. The second one becomes parallel to, or I apologize, the first one becomes parallel to the second. That's the one you're changing from. That's the one you're changing to. Hit escape. Maybe I want those lines actually to be equal. I can use the equal key. Select the first one, select the second one. Now that one snapped. They're not always the same. That's something to learn just as you go along. But now those lock into one another. Say I wanted this line actually to be horizontal, or maybe I drew a line that was really close to horizontal and I wanted that to be horizontal. I can use the vertical horizontal key. That snapped the whole thing and rotated the entire project, or the entire sketch rather. And that's because everything already started having some solid constraints, some solid defined line properties. So it made more sense for the whole thing to just rotate. It's one of the intuitive components of Fusion. You can apply all manner of stuff. Circles, starting from center circles, means that if you start from one point and draw outward, there you are, hit escape. You can draw ellipses. Start from the center, pick one point going out, pick another point going up. Now you can start to build more things. You can basically draw whatever you please. You can mirror across things, that sort. But so far, that's just been defined edges, either the straight lines or picking for the drop down, be it rectangles, be it circles, that such. What if you want to draw curved lines? That is your fit point spline. And as it says here, it creates a spline, which is basically a flexible line through a selected set of fit points, which are simply points you have chosen within this area. So I'm going to select there, and I'm just going to start getting things drawn. Now you see that first one was straight. As soon as I start a third point, now it's going to curve around depending on that point. Now I hit enter, finish out that line. If you hit escape, it's going to zero out the whole thing. Well, now suddenly there's these weird green lines attached to it. These are your handlebars. Now you can still move the points around, select the point, and either go up here, select the move copy button, or just press M, and you'll see your move icon comes up. The arrows lock it in singular directions, meaning if I use the right arrow, it will only move left and right from that position. If I use the upper arrow, it will only move up and down, in this case, the y-axis from that position. If I choose the square just to the right, that lets you what's called a free transform. There's no constraints or anything attached to it. Click OK. Yeah, sure, great. All right, click back on there, and now I have these handlebars. Well, what do these do? This is how you can tweak the curve of this line. Now to do that, to select that, you have to select the line again. So I can pick any of these. If I pick one, click and hold the point, I can drag it away and it makes the curve much larger. And I can also twist the handlebar and it'll twist that curve around. So this is how you can really manipulate some lines, make some funky lines, however you please, or you can trace around something. I'll show you that in a minute. Last thing is you can create text. Now the text tool within Fusion has gotten significantly better, and you have two options: just creating text, or you can create text along a path. And what a path is a line like this fit point spline I just created. So first, let's just do a basic set of text. And this opens up, you create a text box. If you've used like Illustrator or Photoshop or anything like that, a lot of Apple products or Adobe products rather will have you create a text box. Select that, and now you have basic text. You can create whatever, blah, 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 or blah. There you go. You can, of course, change if it's bold or italics. You can play with the different fonts, whatever have you. Say you are making this into a stamp. You have these flip tools, so you could flip this horizontally and make it go backwards. So if you were to create a stamp, ink it and stamp it, it would be a reverse of the image. Same thing, your alignments, if it's the center, up and down, whatever have you, play around. Font size, spacing, that sort. Okay, super duper. Now I want to try, instead, I'll do a different one, text, and I'll select text on a path. My path is my fit point spline. Now I'm going to unflip that. So I got sample text, blah, blah, blah. So now you can play around with spacing along this path. And you see it'll fit whatever you please. Really fun, fit to path. It'll actually lock to it. Now it'll go over the entire extent. Unselect that, or deselect that rather, and it's going to fill out from the center of this line. You can align it to the top or the bottom of the line, and then otherwise text stuff is all exactly the same. Okay, so you have that sort. That's pretty much how you can create any of this stuff. When you are finished with your sketch, now of course we'll go into all the other constraints as well in depth, but there's always more things to be learned. Once you finish your sketch, you go to Finish Sketch. Novel, I know, right? Now you have a set of sketches that you can then extrude. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the home button. It's gonna go back to 3/4 view. Now you see it's like the whole thing's laying out in front of you rather than just looking straight down at it. From here, I could use the Extrude tool. And this is where we can start moving things 3-dimensionally. So that first oddball shape, I'm gonna select that, and I can use the slider, drag it up or down, depending on what you please, or I can enter things numerically. Maybe that needs to be 12.5 millimeters, don't know. You have a bunch of different options with the toolbox here as well. Standard is start plane, as the starting at the profile plane. That's what we're gonna work for right now. Direction, you wanna go in one direction, it could be symmetrical. From that symmetrical, you could choose it to be, maybe it's 12.5 on both directions, or you select whole length, meaning that the extrusion going in either direction, that way, is 12.5 millimeters entirely. All that sort. All kinds of different stuff you can play with, but for now, we're just gonna go with one direction. And at the very bottom here is called Operation. Right now, it's not intersecting with anything else, but this is how you can connect multiple things together. That'll make more sense in a bit. But right now, we're just gonna go with Operation New Body. Cool, 3-dimensional thing. Where did all my sketches go? This is where I wanted to talk about the hierarchy tree. As you see, now I have a couple of things going on. The hierarchy tree here on the upper left has gotten larger. There are now a section for bodies and a section for sketches. I can expand those out, and I have the sketch there. You'll see the little eyeball icon is more ghosted with a line through it. If I select that, now my sketch reappears. Same thing for down at the bottom, my history slider. I can now click and hold the slider and slide it before the extrusion. Now I can go back to work on the sketches without having the extrusion in the way. Fine for right now. It's not a very complex form. Move it back out. There we go. Let me orbit around and let's look at something that is nested inside of one another, like this sketch here. I want to extrude this. All right. Well, I've selected the extrude tool and I'm going to mouse over, but I'm going to show you what happens when you have two lines or really anything intersecting with one another on the same plane. Fusion assumes that whatever you have drawn is a delineating element, meaning that I drew this ellipse inside this circle, so certainly I expect that that's going to be two different things. Meaning, select the outside there. Well, it's only selected the outside. As I start to click and drag that up, you'll see it's completely lost that intersection. If I had wanted that to also be there, I can now go and also select the intersection. Now it's just a cylinder. So that's how you can do that. Let me deselect the profiles on the extrude box that pops up. All of these tools create a pop-up window. So I'm going to select that outer one and I'm going to go upwards. Okay, cool. Let's say 8 millimeters. Sure, why not? Selecting new body, great. Another new body appeared in my body section. Another one appeared at the bottom of the time slider. Sketches stayed where they are. Well, now let's say I wanted to create something below it, or rather, I also wanted there to be like a bottom to this. I didn't want this to just be a hollow circle or kind of cylinder. I wanted this more to have like a bottom to it. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna press and hold Shift and orbit up, or again, you can just use the orbit tool. Slide it, pan over so I can see what I'm doing. Select extrude again. And now I'm going to select that outer one, but I'm also going to select the inner one. Well, now I'm going to drag downward. So negative number, let's say -2. Sure, fine. Orbit back up, and you can see that there's a solid thing going on here. Well, look over at the extrude toolbox here. Now at operation, it is automatically jumped to join. That means that it's going to link everything together and make it one solid body. Leave it at join, great. Watch what happens to the hierarchy tree over here. Or rather, let me leave it as new body for one, and you'll see. It is expanded and made Now there are two separate bodies. So I'm creating more bodies. I'm going to go down to the history slider, and this is how you can go back in time and edit things. Or right click on that last extrusion, go to edit feature. Now I want to go to that operation and select what it was automatically going to do. Join. Click OK. Now my hierarchy tree, there's back to only two bodies again. It has joined these two elements together. And just to make it make a little more sense, let me hide sketches and zoom in on there. So now you can see that's all one solid thing. So cool. So that's really very introductory thing. Well, all right, kind of looks like a weird person thing. Anyhow, well, great. Doodles are fun. I want to actually have something real going on. So I'm going to start a new project. Now you can open tab, new design, or just like a browser window, you can go up to this tab, new design, there you go. So you can still cycle back and forth. So if you're working on two things, there you go. Well, say I wanted to start from something. I actually wanted a reference point. Maybe you want to make a, you know what? I have no idea. You want to draw it off of a face or something, a reference photo. There you go. So to do that, on your toolbar, almost all the way to the right, under insert. Now the default one is, the default icon is what we're going to be using, insert canvas. But insert is how you can put other stuff into the project anyway. So, but I want to start with a canvas. So I'm going to select there. And this is how you can either already have a reference image on your folder, or you can insert from your computer. So select OK. And I'm going to make a Mark I Iron Man mask thing. Not the whole helmet, just a 2D drawing. So I'm going to select OK. And now I get to decide what plane I want to put this on. I want to put this on the XY plane, the flat, like tabletop plane. Select there. It's teeny. I want to make that larger. All right. Well, you can do that numerically on the bar here, on the tool window. You can also change the opacity. If you want it to be really light, you can dial it down, leave it where it is, a little bit better, whatever. You can move it around, but right now it is centered right in the center of the project area. It works for me. I can scale it either in one direction. These are scale factors, by the way, not like numeric numbers. So if it's a scale factor of 2, it's going to be twice as big as the thing. So on and so forth. Or I could use a slider. You see that your standard arrows, great. There's also this ring. I can rotate it that way, but I'm going to leave it where it was, just at 0 degrees. Again, you can do it numerically. These extra little bars here, this is how you can scale it either non-uniformly or uniformly. The straight bar, click and drag, that's how I can do a stretch non-uniform in one direction, same as the other. Not what I want to do for either. So go back to 0 and 1 actually, sorry. Back to 1, back to 1, back to 1. Or we just have to click Control Z. And it's not letting me go back. Crud. Okay, well, do it over, no problem. Same dealy, same dealy. There we go. If I wanted to scale it uniformly, the angle thing, the little angle line, that's how you can use the slider. So for now, I'm just going to say, let's make it twice as big as it was. Okay. Well, I still want to be able to make this like a reference point. So one of the things I want to do is figure out how to actually make this like a relatable size. So now in the hierarchy tree, there's a canvas. Expand that one. Helmet, right click, calibrate. Now this is how you can actually put like a real dimension to it. So let me just use the view cube, go to top so I can see what I'm doing. And now what it wants you to do, because there's no instructions weirdly, is it wants you to like select a couple points. So I'm just going to select smack in the middle and then like from the top. All right, that's saying from the middle to the top is 16 millimeters. That's pretty tiny. Let's say overall, I want this to be like 10 millimeters tall, or sorry, 100 millimeters or 10 centimeters. So I'm going to make that 50 because it's half of it. So there we go. Much bigger. There we are. So now if I wanted to inspect, which we haven't gotten to yet, there's no points for me to work from, so I'll have to do it later. Okay, but I know that's how big it needs to be. All right, now I have something to work from. I'm gonna close that, start a new sketch, looking straight down. Cool, so now I can start tracing on top of this. Start from lines, and I'll just start from like one eye socket, go along, and basically just so on and so forth. And you can just start tracing parts and work from there. So basically for this project, if you are doing like a tracing or something like that, totally fine. Take your time, work from a canvas. When you're done, we'll use that to extrude outwards as well. But basically, this is the path to take for here. Maybe I want to actually overall turn this into like a coin or something. So I'm going to start a circle right from the center, and let's make it something about there. Sure. One of the other tools that's nice to have, say if I wanted to turn this into like a little like coin or so, I'm going to make a little edge instead of, yes, I could make another circle, or I can use this offset tool. Select that circle, and I want that circle to be, I want that to be 3 millimeters wider or larger than the other circle. The good thing about using the offset tool is, say I want to change this inner circle here. I'm going to go to this sketch dimension tool. Select there. I'm going to just select that circle. Now you'll see a line show up that's showing how large that circle is. Okay. That circle is 106 millimeters. Maybe I just really want that to be a more round number, and I'm going to make that 110. Well, now that outer circle, because it's offset and dependent on that inner circle, it's going to stay 3 millimeters larger than that other one. So there's going to be all kinds of little doodads like that. But basically, start working from one spot and move on. Now, one other thing on here we haven't talked about is, okay, great. What I'm doing some lines, yeah, however you work. I'm working on some lines, but I really want to have like just reference lines that don't interact with anything. Well, when you go over to your sketch palette, the first option here is also what's called a construction line. You can either select here or press the X key on your keyboard. Now, when I make a line, and I'm just going to bisect this whole thing, let me zoom out a little bit, start somewhere up on the Y axis and draw downward. Doesn't matter the length. Hit escape to finish that. Well, now I have this dotted line. What that is now it's just a reference line that won't actually interact with anything. So I can just draw some stuff in here so that I can have exactly that, a reference. You know what, because later on I want to draw some things that start and stop right smack in the middle. Cool. The other thing that it's useful for is using the mirror tool. The one other tool that is shown here at the top by default, mirror. It makes an opposite thing. So select that mirror tool. I want both of these kind of eye socket things that I was working on. Well, I can go through and double click them, and that'll select the whole enclosed line, or I can use a selection box, just like on a lot of standard things. Click and hold. If I click and hold from the left and drag right, it will select anything that is completely inside of that box. See, it did not select that construction line, but it did select the two eye socket lines there. Or let me close that. Or I can select, click and hold and select drag from the right to the left. That will select anything that box touches. So see, it selected both the outer rings and all that such. So easy way to select stuff. I'm going to go from the left to the right, select just the eyeballs. There we go. mirror line. I'm going to select that construction line. That's going to mirror over. Now, is that exactly the right, it's exactly where it is on the helmet? No, because the helmet is ever so slightly out of center. That's fine. But this would be a really convenient way of working if, instead of having to trace the entire thing, if you have a symmetrical image, well, you can do half of it and then mirror the entire other half. Work smarter, not harder. And this program, like a lot of other ones, will certainly help you do just that. So with something like this, continue along. I'll continue along with this, and I will catch you back up when I finish doing the drawing. So give me a moment and we'll get to that. So to make this upper line here, I just want to show you a few details for making like the overall outline and such. I'm going to use a fit point spline for the upper line there. Start about up in the center. And I'm just going to trace along as best I can. Now, remember what I said about being able to use those handlebars and things like that? This is definitely where you start to learn where is it important to put more points and less points. Fewer points, you're going to get a much smoother, longer arc. More points closer together is how you create tighter spots. And remember, you can always change these around later. I drag this way down, that's all going to be pretty well a straight line. Problem is then when I make another selection, it's going to start to flex. So this might be a good point. Hit enter, let that line be finished. And it looks like I forgot to change back over from construction line. So if I select this line, you'll see over my sketch palette, line type, deselect construction line. Now it's back to being a regular line. We're good. So I can keep working, start a new fit point spline right there, and just kind of work my way up. Close enough, close enough. Zoom way in. Now what I'm going to do is work back and forth and connect those two. So now you see I'm working really close. If I just snap over there, I'm going to end up with this weird circle here, or this weird extra here. And it looks like I forgot to change from construction line again. So select there. The reason it's doing that is because it assumes that's where your default working is. All right. So from there, I'm going to select one of these points, and I'm going to move that point. I'll just use the free transform to get closer to where it actually needs to be. Okay. Do the bottom. Something, something. Getting close, getting close. Zoom in. A few extra points closer together will help me get those ridges. There we are. Oops. And I hit escape instead of enter, so that whole line disappeared. Be careful which button you hit to finish your work. Now this time, I'm remembering to actually deselect construction line right from the get-go. Do some additional line work here, get closer, closer. Sure, something like that. There we go. Press enter to finish. My mistake. Now the reason it keeps selecting everything as blue is because I have these rings out here. That's all. Is it irritating? Absolutely. So let me select that point there again. Fix that a little bit. Okay. All righty. Here, I'm going to use a straight line, and we'll just draw more of a rectangle around. Closer there. Doesn't have to be exact. Reconnect those lines. Neat. This line, a bit straighter, but that curve is much more of a curve. So what I'll do is I'll press enter, finish that line, and now I'll match a straight line with a fit point spline. So I'm going to go straight to the corner over here, start a fit point spline, and work that mouth grill. Oops. work that mouth grill a little bit more accurately. There we are. Press enter, finish that. Great. So this is basically how you end up going. You just keep working, keep doing your lines as close as you can get them to where you want them to be. Or of course, it's your project, so tweak them how you like. From here, I can now do a mirror again. So select mirror. I want this whole outline as well as, whoops, it's deselecting. I'm just confusing the line. There we are. Now I'm not going to mirror the mouthpiece because that's not quite as symmetrical. But now select my mirror line. Boop, matches that over, and I forgot to select something. So go back to objects and also select that lower line. There we go. That connected again. Okay. So now that is a completely enclosed form. So let me just go ahead and draw that one last mouth grill piece. And I don't want a rectangle tool. I want that one. And we'll go closer to where I want this to be. Enter, fit point spline. Closer there, sort of, kind of ish. Now you'll see when let me zoom in, and you'll see sometimes it's like suddenly like red dotted line will show up or green dotted line. That is showing that it is in line, and it'll help snap your cursor to that line. It's showing you that it's in line with the last point you selected. So it's just convenient ways of working without like having to draw out, basically bring out a either add constraints or a digital ruler, basically, or digital straight edge. Select OK, those two are connected, super duper. All right. So that's a bit closer. I'm gonna hit F6 is your hotkey to resize. Now, one of the things you'll see, all right, well, what are all these floating little things around, these points? That is the constraint tool, symmetry. What that means is that if I make a change to one of these points, say like, you know what, over here, this one, I'm gonna select that, brings up the handlebar, and you know what, I actually wanna move that point around just a little bit, but drag it over, and do it way too much, but it's doing the same thing on either side. So these are symmetrically locked. So it's not like you can have to go back and forth and tweak that. But change that a little bit, and there we go. Or I guess just hit cancel. So that just shows you what's happened. All right, finish sketch. I always like to just go back to the home button, home view, just because I can kind of see the perspective again. Makes more sense to me. Okay, so now I can start divvying this all up with my extrusion tool. And what I mean by that is hit extrude, and I'm going to start with like the center mask part. I can do multiple levels of extrusions, and that's going to help me make a multi-tiered form, multi-tiered object. So the center mask, I'm going to drag that up, let's say, sure, 6 millimeters. That seems about right. Hit OK. All my sketches went away. Crap. Open up your hierarchy tree again. Unhide the sketches. Now you can see what you're doing again. OK. So now I want to select, say, that intersection. Let's see here. Nope, not that sketch. Let's hit extrude. I want that one, and what's going on here? Looks like something didn't get copied correctly. I might have forgotten to copy a line or so. All right, so this is something that happens. If you notice that, all right, I've made these symmetrical, why am I not being able to select the same one on both sides? Problem with that is what might have happened when I did the mirror tool, looks like one of the lines, for whatever reason, did not get mirrored. So, pardon me, and hit cancel. And I'm going to use the history slider to slide back before I did the extrusion. Not that you have to do that, it just sometimes helps to see what you're doing. And it looks like, whatever reason, it's not connected. Easy way to tell is if I select just that inner area, it'll select it as an actual solid interconnected thing. But if I mouse over here on this other side, it's selecting the whole thing. All right, well, to fix that, I'm going to go back and edit the sketch. Right click there. There we are. And all I'm going to do is draw an additional line there. Why it's not registering, I don't know. I'm going to select line, and I'm just going to connect those two dots. There we are. Finish sketch. You zoom out. Now it's letting me select those two sections. That's all. No idea why it was doing it, but there we are. Move the history slider back to front, or just use the fast forward, move to end button, snaps back. Cool. Use the extrusion tool. I want both of those. And since the overall thing was 6 millimeters, oops, let's make that 3. Sure. I'm going to leave the operation as join. There we are. Let me hide the canvas, and you can see where I'm going with this. Cool. All right. So what about, like I said, making this into like a coin or something? That's why I added these extra rings here. What I can do now is do another extrusion, and I'm going to select that circle as well as this outer ring. Well, the problem is it didn't select those inner spaces there. So you can either go through and keep selecting all those inner sections, or let me hide the bodies, which is always creepy to keep repeating, but it ends up happening. And I can just do a mass selection box and just cover everything. Well, let me deselect because now it's reversing stuff. Deselect what you already had selected, select all the things. And now I'm going to extrude negative direction. So I can either use the slider or there. Now I have, the reason it's giving me the warning button, or this warning down here at the bottom, is because I hid all of the body sections. So I'm going to expand the hierarchy tree and unhide. Now it's showing everything again. And I'm going to leave this join operation in place. There we are. Okay, neat. Now I've got like a whole coin thing going. I'm going to do one more thing here and add a ridge. Oops. Hit the extrude, just that edge, extrude up, 2 millimeters, sure. Leave the join in place. There we are. Now when I go and hide sketches, now it's showing me this whole emblem thing going. Hit F6 to resize, and there we go. Now, is this the end of what you can do? Absolutely not. We're going to talk about this more in class, but over in the modify section, this is where you can like round out edges and things like that. The tools we can do with that are fillet and chamfer. A fillet makes a rounded edge, or rounded corner rather, and a chamfer makes a straight angled edge. To do that, select fillet, and cool thing is on here you can do just a regular fillet, which only affects one edge. And let's say like, now 2 is going to be too large, but there we are. You see how that rounded out that edge now? It's difficult to see. Let me turn off the grid. You can see a little bit easier. Or let me change the shading property. Nope, that's not what I meant to do. There we are. Hit OK. All right. Let me change the shading properties or everything. You can see a little bit better with it, just grayscale. Okay. However, what if I want this outer one to be completely rounded over? Use fillet. In the toolbox, open full round and select just that outside edge. Center faces, super duper. There we are. Sometimes it doesn't work. Why? Let's see here. Oh, select the faces, blah, 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 blah. Fine. Then I want there. Ugh. Probably not working because I already did that fill on the inside. Yeah. All right. Let me cancel that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the history slider and I'm going to insert a fillet before I did that inner one. So I move the history slider before that, fillet tool, full round, that edge, there we go. Now it made that whole outside edge a circle. Click OK. I'm probably going to get a warning, or an error, but let me now move the history slider forward again. Oh, didn't. Cool. So now it has a rounded edge on the inside and the outside. That inner fillet might be a little bit too much, but we'll deal with that. But that's how you can make rounded parts. Can you do the same for in here? Absolutely. But this is basically to play around with it. And I'm going to change the colors again. And what I'm doing is pressing Shift in. And that's just the auto assign. So that's very basic. Could I do a lot more with this? Absolutely. Will I show you how? Also, yes. But that's pretty much the core of the assignment. And that's pretty much the core of the layout of a lot of the line tools. Is that all of them? Absolutely not. But play around with them, see what you come up with. And of course, if you have any questions, please always ask. Or I'm not the only source of information. As I said, I take no issue with you looking at other videos and other such. Other people might say the exact same thing, but explain it a little bit differently, and it might make more sense to you. But play around, work on the sketch, then play with extruding, and of course, I'll help you with both. So good luck with it. Have fun. Last thing, though, what did I forget? The most important thing, anytime you're working on a computer, no matter what, save your work. Up here, it still says entitled. All right, so you can either press Control S or just use the save icon. This is where you get to choose, where do I want this? All right, well, make a example. Iron Man mask or Iron Man coin, and I'll save it into my folder, personal works. Saved, there we go. Make sure it's saved, we're all set. Okay, I'll show you how to do the other stuff later, but that's pretty much the basics. Don't want to run this video way too long. So thanks very much. Good luck with it and have fun, hopefully. All righty. We'll see you in class.